Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, it's Stock Up, Stock Down, episode 4, and the Eagles are undefeated at 4-0, so going to be a lot of positives on today's show. That's coming up on your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to a Tuesday edition of the podcast. I'm Louis DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri, running 4 years strong. This is actually season 5 for us. You can find us Monday through Friday on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit us up on Twitter at LockedOnBird, at GC24_football, and at DiBiase LOE. Your Philadelphia Eagles are 4-0 for the first time in 18 years. They're the only undefeated team left in football after a 4-0 start with a big win against the Jacksonville Jaguars Sunday, 29-21. Gino, we got stock up, stock down today, and for the 4th week in a row, it's going to be mostly positives. I think we have 2 stock downs compared to like 4 or 5 stock ups.
Positive things happen to get victories, and you have seen that.
In dominating fashion, too, you're going to have not a lot of – this isn't 2018, 2019 where each win you have like 10 problems with what happened, you know?
And the way that they're doing it is that they are showing that they're worth being 4-0. They've won in a blowout fashion. They've won in a shootout fashion. They've now won in an adversity-stricken fashion.
Bad weather, injuries, down 14-0. Yep.
They're showing you that they can get it done in a magnitude of different ways. And it's going to be a saving grace, Lou, when they go down and they're playing in a dome in Arizona next week, coming off of the conditions that they played in. They'll be able to continue to play fast, play smart, play efficient. But the first 4 weeks, it's hard to really knock a lot of the things that they're doing. It's just individual areas where you can clean up to better the team, but I don't think anybody is on the field that you're playing in spite of. Everybody's there, and you're either winning with them or you're winning because of these players. And I mean, outside of special teams, the offense is dominating when they need to. The defense clearly has been dominating when they need to. Nick Sirianni has done better, I would say, taking a step back from being the play caller and being able to see the
Shane Steichen's
situation.
Killing it, by the way.
Yeah,
I mean,
Steichen is on fire. Gannon's on fire.
Oh, they just whatever it takes to get a win is what they do. When they need to turn into the ground and pound team of 2021, that's what they did against Jacksonville. When they know they can throw on any team at any moment, and the weather's nice against Washington or against Minnesota, they're going to throw it for 30-plus times. So there's just, as you mentioned, they're firing on all cylinders right now. They look like the best team in football. The biggest key is, Jalen Hurts taking the step. And when you look at even in those tough conditions, you're down 14-0. Hurts has the worst throw of his season so far, that pick 6 in double coverage. It was late. Then he goes on the rest of the way to still surpass 200 yards passing through the air. Gino, in all 4 games, this offense, even in that game against Jacksonville, has surpassed 400 yards from scrimmage. There's only 6 other teams that have done that since 1940, and 4 of them went on to win the Super Bowl. So that's true production when, even in the weather, you can still throw and run like that. Again, it's like 2017 where everything is clicking, but the quarterback taking the step was always the key to reach the maximum ceiling.
I want to do something each week with Jalen Hurts, and we could quickly go through the first 4 weeks. I want to label him as a player you win in spite of, a player you won with, or a player you won because of. I would say week 1, you won because of Jalen Hurts. Week 2, you won because of Jalen Hurts. Week 3, you won because of Jalen Hurts. And week 4, even though he got off to that tough start with the pick 6, that looked like you were going to win in spite of him, that 4th down touchdown run and what he did the rest of the way showed that you won because of this.
You won because of his mobility, Gino, but also, I mean, the passing game, again, in those conditions with Devontae Smith banged up and, the Jaguars are a good defense. He still completed 64% of his passes for 204 yards, 16 of 25 on the day. So that's the thing with Jalen is you can win because of him in many ways. And on Sunday, it called for his legs. And I keep watching that 4th and goal touchdown. There's only a few quarterbacks that can absorb that kind of contact by 2 guys and dive into the end zone and score. It's just again, his demeanor, not just the mobility and the power running style that really only Josh Allen has, but the demeanor, the calmness that you won because of that too, which is, it's just another part of his game.
You're seeing the evolution and maturity of Jalen Hurts not just grow year over year, but I think it's continuing to grow game over game. I mean, to be in that situation, to throw that pick six, we have seen in the past where he has snowballed and you were trying to win in spite of him, and he really could never get it going in some games last season. But you have the ability with this great group of individuals and Shane Steichen and quarterback coach Brian Johnson and Aaron Moorhead at wide receiver coach and Stoutland to adapt your game plan to best utilize what Jalen Hurts can do. And the thing is, even though he's been one of the better passers in football, even still completing 64% of his passes on Sunday, he is a top 2 rushing quarterback in the league right now outside of Lamar Jackson. And the way he does it, how many quarterbacks put their shoulder down on the goal line against 2 guys and are willing to keep churning their legs?
He's like a mix of Lamar
guys
and Allen.
And Josh.
When you think about it, he doesn't have the explosiveness of Lamar, but he's got as much wiggle in the open field. I mean, he almost always makes the first guy miss, but then he has the physicality of Allen where 1, 2, it sometimes takes 3 guys to take Jalen down. I mean, we've said a million times, the guy squats 600 pounds. I mean, trying to get low on Jalen is tough. He really is kind of a mix of both when it comes to his mobility.
I would say that he is essentially like your third running back on the team. I mean, he might be bigger in his lower half than Miles Sanders, and Trey Sermon really looked like a fair competition body style wise when you're looking at those two. But the backfield with what they have running the ball, Lou, why they're so good at doing it and why you're able to see 3 guys accumulate 4 touchdowns in this game. You go back to Detroit, the same thing. Now, I think this is the second time since the 1960s that has happened where they've scored 4 touchdowns in a game. The way that they're doing it, Miles Sanders' explosion in efficiency, Kenny Gainwell's ability to just be a one-cut runner when he has a hole and hit the hole and go, and Jalen Hurts' ability to make dudes miss all over the field, his ability to continue to churn his legs, and now with Trey Sermon, who seems to be a more physical runner, outside, inside zone type of runner, you can't just look at what Jalen does and say that's an individual effort that he makes. That's a team effort, and you can set up his runs because you have other guys, because you have to account for the other players on the field.
And they have to account for Jalen too, and that opens up everything for these running backs. I mean, some of the lanes they had, of course, it's the offensive line, but these edge rushers and these linebackers, they're always like half a second late because they have to take into account number one.
Bingo.
They always have to be like looking at the side, their side eye, watching Jalen. You know what I mean? And that's such a huge asset for this offense. And it's not in sacrifice of the passing game, as you mentioned. The passing game is one of, if not the best in the NFL right now, and the running game is still top tier. So stock up still to Jalen Hurts. And, I was thinking about this yesterday, right? Compared to, because they haven't played this complete a football over a month-long stretch since, I would say, 2017. And you look at 2017 through 4 weeks compared to where they are now. That team was 3-1. The Eagles right now are 4-0. So if you can remember back to that season, how you were feeling about that team at 3-1 versus how you feel now at 4-0, are you more sold on this team or were you more sold on that team?
I'm 100% more sold on this team, in my opinion.
I agree.
Because when you go back to that season, they played that debacle of a game in Kansas City week 2 where they only ran the ball twice.
Yeah, they had to grind it out against the Giants.
Yeah, they barely beat the Giants.
60-yard field goal to win it.
Yeah, the Jake Elliott great field goal that they had. And the way that they were playing, it really wasn't the identity until that Carolina game. I think the Carolina game in week 6 really solidified who they were as a football team. I felt
agree.
good. I felt that they were a promising team.
Because you could tell Wentz was breaking out.
Yeah, they were on pace to be one of those teams that we talk about that they're a young team, up and coming, might get to the playoffs, might win a playoff game, but that development happened way quicker. If you look at what the Eagles are doing now and all the building blocks that were set up in past seasons, that puts them ahead of where they were in 2017, in my opinion, because 2017 then sets the standard. We already know what the standard is. We didn't have a standard prior to 2017. There was never a Super Bowl. There was never the top of the mountain. They've never
and there weren't even
that.
really the preseason expectations, Gino. I thought that team, I projected them that year, and I think it was July. I had them going 9-7 and making the wild card. So we knew they were going to take another step, and the roster looked good. But I didn't say, like we said this offseason, me and you both said this might be the most complete roster in the NFL on paper. We weren't saying that in 2017. So I think it's, the preseason expectations weren't there. So, and even when they were 3-1, they weren't dominating teams like they are now. Not yet, at least. It really started with, as you said, the Panthers game, and ironically so, it was the Arizona game where Wentz went off, and then they went on that 9-game win streak. So the Eagles in 2022, they have the expectations already, and they're starting it earlier. So I'd say right now I'm more sold on where I'm at with this team in 2022 than I was in 2017.
I would have to absolutely agree. And to look at what those seasons, 2017, 18, 19, 20, were able to teach you different lessons to get you here. And those pillars that we continue to talk about, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, guys like that were on that team. They're holding this team to a higher standard. Nick Sirianni is holding this team to the standard that Doug Peterson left. And Jalen Hurts, above all, the one thing that we continue to just, I think we take it for granted at this point in his career, is his ability to remain even-keeled and put the expectations out the window to go and play good football. We might believe that this team is set up better than they were in 2017, but inside that building, they still believe that they have work to do, which is an incredible mindset when you're at 4-0. You're not going to get comfortable. You're not going to let the league catch up to you. You're going to be a step ahead of everybody else, and that should be the goal the rest of the way.
Stock up coming up next, Gino. Eagles Jaguars edition. There were a lot of positives in that 29-21 win, so we got a lot of players to get into. But first, a shout out to our sponsor of the day. It's Athletic Greens, a product that we use literally every day. I started taking Athletic Greens because I simply don't have enough time in the day to prepare the amount of healthy meals I need to get through. I've got a lot of jobs right now, both day and evening. The grind is real, and I needed more energy. Good feeling energy. Started relying on caffeine too much, which is just not the move. I've been on Athletic Greens now for a few months, and I absolutely love it. It doesn't taste healthy either. It has a mild tropical flavor that I'm really into. I look forward to, drinking it each morning as I write my articles for Fox 43, get ready for the podcast with Gino. So what is this stuff? Well, with one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All of those things. I sent it to my brothers too. They're really enjoying it. It supports better sleep quality, recovery, supports mental clarity and alertness. It's the one thing with all of the best things. It costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially headed into the winter season. It's just one scoop and a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm Louis DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri. We make sure to check out the NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL. Locked On's local experts, including Gino and I, give you the inside scoop on the 5 biggest games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday Night Football, plus betting advice from the field's leading experts at BetOnline. Gino, we're going to continue to recap Eagles-Jaguars. The Eagles got to 4-0 on Sunday, a 29-21 win. They overcame a 14-0 deficit early. Injuries all across the roster on offense and defense. Guys like Jordan Mailata go down, Darius Slay, Isaac Seumalo. Luckily, by the way, it sounds like none of those injuries are super serious, so that's a stock up right there. But they overcame those injuries, bad weather, being down 2 scores. And there's a ton of players to get into, man. But I think we got to start with kind of the hero of the game that saved the final play, the strip sack to end the game. And it's the edge rusher, Haason Reddick, the local kid. I mean, look, the Eagles have been really good at rushing the passer for as long as I've been a fan, but they've been missing a playmaker like this that actually gets the quarterback down to the ground, sacks on a consistent basis like Reddick does, and forced fumbles, turnovers. This has really been the missing piece that, even in like 2017, 2018, when the defensive line was great, they didn't have a guy like this. And you saw his true potential of why you paid him on Sunday. He took over that game.
I think the reason why Chris Long, who was honored this weekend in Philadelphia, was so beloved was because, like you said, there really wasn't that dominant force. But when Chris Long would come on the field situationally, he would end up being that guy, and Eagles fans beloved him because of that. Haason Reddick, like you said, is that guy that we have been waiting for. It's not a 33-year-old journeyman, or it's not just a rotation
that wins
by
off
committee.
motor, right? This is a young speed edge rusher that creates sacks and turnovers.
With technique, with hustle, with his ability to win inside and outside, with his ability to line up all over the field. And just playing at home in Philadelphia, in the stadium you played in college, that's got to be such a cool feeling for Haason Reddick. And he just knows that if he works hard, the fans are going to give back to him. And I can't even imagine how loud it was in that stadium, Lou, when he got that strip sack. And you look at what are the biggest plays in the history of the Eagles, and you could look back on this one, Lou, at the end of the season. Maybe this is one of those sparks that really ignited this defense to go on a stretch where they're able to hit home and just instill fear in quarterbacks. And not only are they doing it in a way that we haven't seen in the past, they're doing it against quarterbacks who still get the ball out quick, who have had success against them in the past. They're getting to guys like Kirk Cousins. They got to guys like Jared Goff. They're getting to Trevor Lawrence, who's young and up and coming. And you just want to continue to see this, because when you go and play in the division games against, Dallas in a couple weeks, if Dak Prescott's back, you're going to have somebody that's mobile and can chase him off the edge.
Kyler Murray this week, right?
Kyler Murray, 100%.
A guy like Reddick on the edge to chase him down.
Pittsburgh in a couple weeks. You don't know if it's going to be Mitch or Kenny Pickett.
Who knows?
Both of those guys are mobile.
Maybe later in the season you get Malik Willis with Tennessee, although they're 2-2. So Tannehill can run for sure. So the Eagles right now are the only team, Gino, with at least 5 players that have over 2 sacks. They have Reddick at 3.5. They have Cox and Graham at 3. Josh Sweat's got 2.5, and TJ Edwards, funny enough, actually is 2. They lead the NFL in sacks with 16, and Reddick's leading the way with 3.5. And again, I love that he goes for the ball too, man. I mean, you don't see that a lot with Eagles edge rushers. All 3 solo sacks he has this year were strip sacks. I mean, that's huge.
Wow. That's an insane statistic to just say out loud. And that it really is a skill, because a lot of the time when you're a young pass rusher, you kind of get caught up in the bright lights. Like, oh, I'm in the backfield. I'm the quarterback.
Like wrap him up and get him down now.
Exactly. That ability for Haason Reddick, and if you watch it, how he corners and gets skinny around the edge, and knowing where his hands have to be to high point that football when the quarterback gets at the top of his drop, that's a very intelligent player, somebody who has refined their pass rush, and there's a reason they paid him. And Nick Sirianni, I love this guy more and more every single day. In his press conference on Monday, he was saying how the additions that they got later in the season, like James Bradbury, were great, but he went on and said, oh, you guys were making fun of us saying, oh, we got us Haason Reddick. Well, if Haason Reddick was the only guy that they had and he's playing the way that they are, it really wouldn't necessarily have been the worst move in the world.
Me and you both said when we were doing our free agency preview, like, what is one of the best case scenarios in free agency? What's like a big fish land? It was Haason Reddick. He was one of those guys in that top tier we talked about, and he's been instrumental, especially the last 2 weeks. After a slower start the first 2 weeks, it seems like he's really getting hot, and that's kind of what happens with pass rushers. You know what I mean? So definitely stock up to Haason, hero of the game again with that strip sack to end it on Trevor Lawrence. Gino, the hero on offense, though, because the passing game was tougher to throw in the rain. Running back Miles Sanders. We talked about it on the show yesterday that might have been the best game of his career. And, we've mentioned on the show too before that really since that injury last year, he's such a more decisive runner. He knows when to make the right cut versus when to just get upfield and be a power back. He's been really hard to take down, but Miles Sanders has always been good. So, Gino, I did this comparison with him yesterday. I wanted to do some research comparing him through his first 31 games compared to where LaShawn McCoy was at this point of his career. So I did this 31 games where Miles Sanders, his first 31 games where he has at least 10 plus carries compared to the same with McCoy. Sanders has averaged over 4 yards per carry in 21 of those games. McCoy, through his first 31 games with at least 10 carries, 23 games, he averaged over 4 yards a pop. it's pretty close, man. I mean, Sanders, the efficiency is there. It's kind of always been there. And if he wasn't a running back, I'd say Howie Roseman should give him one of those classic midseason extensions. But the thing is as good as Sanders is playing, we still don't know because of his position if it's going to get him a deal or not. And that's the crazy part.
That is the crazy part.
I mean, I put up a poll on Twitter, man, and it still said 60% of Eagles fans said no to a contract extension, which is, man, it just sucks for guys at that position.
It really does. Miles, fortunately for himself, is doing everything to answer the questions.
He's going to get paid no matter what.
Yeah. Wherever he goes. And maybe it's in Philly. I think a mid-season extension would be great because if he continues to play this way, he's only going to cost more money. And funny enough, I only saw Friday Night Lights for the first time like a month ago, and I realized where Boobie Miles came from. Yeah. And it's true. If you want to win, put Boobie in. It really is true at this point in this Eagles season. Going back to the Buffalo game in 2019, Lou, where it's similar conditions, the wind is through the roof, the rain is coming down sideways. Who was the key cog in that machine? It was Miles Sanders.
Miles, man.
And the guy who was also in that backfield, Jordan Howard, I believe had a great influence in who Miles Sanders is today. Because even last year, Lou, Jordan Howard looked like the more efficient rusher when they put him in there. Now, Miles has seemed to really take on that role of that efficiency-based back. That guy who, he doesn't run like Jordan where he's a more powerful runner. He says, oh, I'm more explosive than these guys, but if I'm efficient, I can pop off 20, 30-yard runs, and he's continuing to do that. It's only a matter of time, Lou, before he gets that next 75-yard run that we have been waiting for, that he has done in the past. I thought he was going to get one on Sunday. It really looked like the way he was just scooting between tackles and his eyes were downfield. There were a couple times he got caught dancing, but I think that comes with the confidence of who he is as a player, and I'm not going to get mad about that.
And you know what's funny is, like, in those conditions, I don't think it's a coincidence that, like, against the Bills when we were there in 2019, this game against Jacksonville, that he thrives in kind of crappy weather environments. LaShawn McCoy did too, and you wouldn't think that for a guy that shifts so much.
Look at where they played in college.
Right.
In Penn State.
I think that kind of style of running back, actually, a lot of people would say, well, it's slippery, it's tough for a guy that cuts a lot to produce in those conditions, but it's already hard for a defensive player to tackle that guy in the open field when they don't have their complete footing down. There's a reason LaShawn McCoy is the best snow running back you've ever seen. I mean, look at that blizzard in 2013 against Detroit. Look at the blizzard he played in Buffalo against Indianapolis in 2017. The guy dominates when weather's bad. Miles Sanders does too, and I think it's because of that. That's the kind of running back that's even harder to tackle when a defensive player doesn't have his footing. So I don't think it's a coincidence that he thrives in these kind of environments.
Boobie Miles, man. Every time he gets the rock, I just feel
he's killing it.
Happy for him, and you could see how happy he is to run the rock, and above all, Lou, to see him do it healthy, to see him be 100% healthy, not have any knocks on his lower half. That's who you wanted to see as a player, and to see how raw he was coming out of Penn State, to see his evolution to today, truly is a work of development in Philadelphia.
All right, Gino, one more stock up here before we get into stock down. The offensive line overall just completely dominated. A good front for Jacksonville. Trayvon Walker, the first overall pick. Josh Allen's a former first-round pick in his own right. That's a really good young edge rusher, and they totally blanketed those guys. Despite losing Jordan Mailata and Isaac Seumalo, it was like Jack Driscoll and Sue Opeta, they held their own, right? But the trio of Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, and Jason Kelsey, they didn't allow a single pressure, hurry, quarterback hit, or sack on Hurts on 90 combined pass blocking snaps. To see the three starters pick up the slack when the other two went down, that was huge, man. And Driscoll found his footing at left tackle. It was the first time he ever played left tackle in the NFL. I mean, hats off to all of those guys and Jeff Stoutland. That unit, it just feels like no matter what happens to them, they just don't let the guys get to Hurts.
Really, I mean, that's what it comes down to. That at the end of the day, that's their goal. Let your quarterback operate the system. And we know that it runs through the offensive line. And much like the rest of the offense where they are able to adapt, a lot of those adjustments came on the offensive line. They tried to sit back and allow Jalen to pass, but you saw the pressure that Jack Driscoll was giving up. But then they said, you know what? Jack Driscoll is pretty good as a run blocker. Let's run to his side. Suo-Opeta comes in, same thing. They were using him as a pulling guard to cross face and open up a hole for Miles Sanders. And that is confidence and trust from Jeff Stoutland. But the big three, Lou, the three guys that were out there at the end of the game, Landon Dickerson, Ben Solak, former host of the show, put out a thread of one of the drives where they just continue to run the ball. And if you watch Landon Dickerson, he was the key cog of that offensive line.
He's been banged up. That's the most impressive part, is the guy is dominating.
Yeah, he's playing with a foot injury.
Yeah, he's been dealing with a nagging foot injury. Listen to this stat, Gino. Players with 270 or more offensive snaps this year that have allowed 0 sacks. So there's 6 guys on this list, and 4 of them are Eagles linemen. The other 2 are Lincoln Tomlinson from the Jets and then Ryan Kelly from the Colts. The other guys, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, and Isaac Seumalo. I mean, I've been watching the Bengals. You watch the Cardinals, the Panthers. A lot of teams do not have this luxury. We've been spoiled to not have to worry about the offensive line for pretty much our entire lifetime. The fact that you can lose 2 guys, most teams their quarterback would be running for their life. In Philadelphia, they don't skip a beat. And the best part is, like, Jalen Hurts hasn't even had to run for his life. You have a guy that can pick up the slack if the offensive line stinks, but he doesn't even have to.
Even in week 1 where they weren't great, he still had plenty of opportunities to sit in there and throw the football. And like you said, they're not allowing Jalen to get pressured. Sometimes that he does get pressured, it's just him maneuvering himself in the pocket in a direction that maybe he shouldn't. But the guys up front are doing their job. And Lane Johnson, if anybody, and I saw somebody tweet out that Penei Sewell was playing like the best right tackle in football. Trust me, I love Penei.
Yeah.
Go Ducks all day long. Great player. Lane Johnson, for anybody with a brain, anybody with eyes, if he is not your number 1 right tackle in football, seeing that he has not allowed against some of the best pass rushers who line up against right tackles in this day and age, Lou. A sack in nearly 2 consecutive seasons.
Do you know how hard that is?
It's downright blasphemous.
He erased the first overall pick like he was nothing. Lane Johnson's one of the most underrated football players in the NFL, man. For sure.
Trayvon Walker, he looked good against. Josh Allen, he's looked good against. Daniil Hunter, everybody in Minnesota, he's looked good against. I mean, Washington with Montez Sweat.
Yeah. They've played a lot of good edge rushers. Aiden Hutchinson was lining up all over the field.
Yeah.
Nobody has had success.
I can't wait to see what they do against Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
If they're able to shut him down, that's going to be the ultimate test.
It's coming up. Gino, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to get into stock down. Not too many players, but there's a few guys that could definitely improve. So we'll get into that coming up right here on Locked On Eagles.
But before that, we have a message from our friends at the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, betonline.net. Let me tell you, if there was a player prop to see if Lane Johnson would allow a sack, I would bet it every single game, and I would make more money than I would know what to do with. But if you want to bet on literally anything in this day and age, you have NHL's coming up. NBA's coming back. I know Lou's psyched about this NBA
Ben Simmons
season.
bricking shots against the Sixers last night, baby.
Sixers win, of course. You got MLB playoffs. The Phillies, for all our Phillies fans, just clinched last night.
Yes,
Congratulations to them. You have Premier League soccer. You got boxing, MMA. You got college football. You have something to bet on every single day. And if you want to do it and get the most information, anything that will help you make a bet, trends, analytics surrounding the bets, betonline.net has it all, and an all-encompassing website. You just go to betonline.net today, put in some cash, find the bet that you like, even make your own player props, which is the coolest thing in sports betting today. Go to betonline.net because it's where the game starts and it's where you win your money.
This is Locked On Eagles. I'm Louis DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri. We're wrapping up this Tuesday edition of LOE. Stock up, stock down. Stock up to a lot of guys. Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, Haason Reddick, the offensive line. We could have even said A.J. Brown, who's the only player in the NFL this year with, in every game, at least 5 catches and over 60 receiving yards. Totally dominating. Gino, when it comes to stock down, I don't know. There's not a lot of guys that have played poor, and that's why they're 4-0. I guess one guy in the backfield that's just not really taking the second-year jump that we were expecting was Kenneth Gainwell. Honestly, I don't know, he's almost regressed in a way as a receiver. Another bad drop against the Jaguars, had that drop against Minnesota that led to an interception. I thought Trey Sermon ran better than Gainwell, despite that 10-yard touchdown Kenny G had. He just, I don't know. I don't know what it is. He does not look like even the guy last year through 4 weeks.
Ball security continues to be an issue for Kenny Gainwell. I know Nick Sirianni has been up and down in his trust of Kenny G, and rightfully so, because of how well Miles Sanders has been running, how effective Jalen Hurts is a runner. Boston Scott, when he's healthy, has been good as well. Trey Sermon, I thought, looked impressive, Lou. I thought as a one-cut runner, you look at that Jordan Howard type of role that they wanted to replace. I think Trey Sermon should be on the 53 moving forward because he really is a change.
He's a third-round pick for a reason. This wasn't some scrub back there.
No, absolutely. And he just got caught up in a backfield in San Francisco that just has
and that's
unbelievable amount of talent.
Backfield. Yeah. You have a shelf life of 3 weeks if you're a Niners running back.
Absolutely. And you see the success that former Niners running backs have elsewhere. Look at Raheem Mostert.
Yeah.
What he's doing in Miami right now. He has been absolutely crushing it. And you go down the board, and it really falls on Kenny G to take advantage of what touches he does get. And when you're 3 to 4 touch in the pass game, maybe 5 to 6 in the run game type of guy, you really have to capitalize on that. As a runner, I thought he's been pretty good running inside the tackles. It's just what we have thought he could be as a receiving weapon.
What he was at Memphis.
Yeah, what we're saying, he could line up in the slot and be that other option for you outside of lining up Devontae there if you didn't want to and making you more versatile in that way. He's kind of regressed. Maybe it's that second-year jump. Maybe it's the sophomore slump that he's getting into. You do want to see Kenny G continue to improve.
For sure. And then, Gino, I'd say stock down. It's not really because of his performance. I thought he's been good this season for sure. But Quez Watkins, it just feels like this is 3 of 4 games now where he hasn't touched the football. And so, last week he drew 2 big pass interference plays that went for over 40 yards. He had that big touchdown against Minnesota. So I think he's still playing well. But it feels like with Quez almost, he's going to have to get 60 to 70 yards every touch to make it worth it for him because they got so many target eaters in front of him with Devontae Smith, with A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, with this running game and Jalen running it a lot. There's not a lot of footballs to go around for Watkins, and luckily he is efficient every time he touches it. But, again, 3 of 4 weeks, he's in the goose egg. So he's just not been very involved, which stinks considering, again, what he could do every time he touches the ball. I would like at least a few more manufactured plays for Quez every game. Again, it's hard because you have so many talented players, but I would like to see a little bit more.
That's the thing that was puzzling to me as well, because when they were using the screen game to open up their yards after the catch, they were doing it with Dallas Goedert on that tight end screen a couple times. They set up Miles for one. They set up A.J. Brown, but Quez Watkins, who was so good at that last year, they didn't manufacture a touch for him.
Maybe it's because it was a physical kind of game and you wanted the spacing was tougher, so you just preferred the more physical runner. But I'm with you. They got to get him in the open field more. I mean, he's taken 3 screens in 2 years to the house. So,
and the thing that really ticked me off was on that throw to Zach Pascal, the interception. Yeah. It's like, why was this the call when we could have just dumped it off to Quez Watkins and said, okay, try and get an explosive run here. Instead, we're going to Zach Pascal in triple coverage, where Zach Pascal, we know Nick Sirianni loves the guy. It does seem that he's getting more targets.
Yeah, it's been a bigger split than I thought it was going to be between Pascal and Quez.
And Quez, it's unfortunate when there is weather that this happens. Hopefully, Lou, in a fast track in Arizona, that's going to be the game where you say, okay, this is where we open up the playbook for Quez.
When he did it against the Cardinals in 2020, remember his first catch he took to the house on a screen pass. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think, again, it's not even really him. It's a matter of circumstance. But I want to see Quez Watkins a little more involved in this offense because he's very dynamic when he gets the football. So we'll see what happens. We got the Cardinals coming up on Sunday. Zach Ertz comes back. A lot of storylines in what could be a shootout like it was 2 years ago. We'll take a first look at that matchup tomorrow on the podcast. We've got crossover Thursday with Locked On Cardinals. We got our Friday show. Subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms for a show every single day on YouTube as well and on Twitter at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase LOE, and at GC24_football. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Now make sure your second listen is the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson, they give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.